Hi all, welcome to part 2 of the intro lecture. There you can see my name. If you've been looking at it wondering a little bit, how do you say this guy's name? It's a little bit of a hokey phonetic attempt, and Tony Skoltz. There's my email. You'll see the note in Blackboard Learn about my preference for you using the UIT email. Whoever designed the Blackboard Learn, whatever it is, messaging system, sort of email equivalent. My theory is they've never actually used email before, maybe never even used the internet. It doesn't track, send messages. It doesn't send notifications if an email goes in. So if you contact me, you're at the mercy of how often I check Blackboard Learn, which is quite regularly, but this is an easier way to go. You will always reach me, right? If you email me at UIT account, it bings on my phone and bings on my computer, and you've reached me very quickly. So yeah, I prefer that. And so today I want to talk about two key things relatively briefly. First, I want to go over the major themes of the course, and then I want to look at the course requirements and some of the content that we will cover. The textbook, again, this is in the syllabus. I'm sure most of you have it. You should get rolling. I've got the readings outlined at the end. We deal with the book in a fairly linear way, and it's as good a book as any technical communication book I've come across. Now, obviously, we have supplements, and as I mentioned in part 1, I have all sorts of example documents and variations on what's in the text. And the text has some really good examples, and in places it's a bit thin, and in particular, those areas I try to beef up a little bit. The Northing-Jawinski book is recommended. It's a great resource. You'll have it for a long time, past your academic career. So, the dry version. What is technical communication? Well, it's instructions, it's explanation, the why, problem solving, and embedded in there is problem identification. So the communication piece is a representation of your expertise, and it's your credibility as a professional. So your research, your writing, and your design, all of that reflects on your professionalism. It's not poetry, right? As I mentioned in part 1, it is depersonalized and is oriented to the needs of the reader in a very specific way, in a very strong way. It's not introspective. Now, that because the writing is depersonalized doesn't mean that the writing is uninteresting or boring, or that it doesn't evoke emotions in the reader. You're presenting a problem, and if your reader connects with the problem, you've got them. And if you can show them that you understand the full breadth of the problem and the potential options to solve the problem, they're with you, right? You're spurring their imagination. It's not a fiction book, but or a feature magazine article, right? Your voice, your character, your personality isn't coming through. All you're doing is taking what the reader needs to fix and helping them solve it. And in that way, you are achieving your goal and their goal. So there are a few, speaking of goals, learning goals, we will spend quite a bit of time talking about purpose and audience, about research skills. I've got some tricks around Google Scholar and some other tools, and then some principles we talk about. There's that analysis of sources and the synthesis of them together. How do we weave, you find 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 really great sources. How do you weave them together in a way that's effective? We will look at structure rhetorical strategies. We will look at sort of at the sentence level and the paragraph level, writing for clarity, and then also referencing to ensure that you've done all this great research, that you don't have a problem, be accused of plagiarism. So that's sort of the dry side of it. It becomes, for me, a little bit more manageable when I start to group things under themes, and hopefully for you too. So one key theme is noise, another is making decisions, another is honesty, and another is uncertainty. So 4 key themes. Let me deal with each of them in turn. When you have noise, and I use that, it's a communication term often associated with radio and other sorts of mediums like that. But for me, noise is anything that distracts the reader, and it's particularly aggravating when somebody reads and there's typos, or there's an incorrect word is chosen, or fonts change. This is noise. It's also noise when you don't make any decisions, when you just include material, right? You find all this great research and you think, well, I found it, I did it, but I'm not gonna start. I did all that work. I'm going to show that I did that work, right? That's a very, I don't want to say narcissistic, but a self-interested sort of approach. It doesn't matter what you did. It's what your audience needs. What does your reader need? And contemporary organizations, whether they're web-based, whether they're manufacturers, technology is becoming so complex that many other experts in your organization don't necessarily understand it. And your ability to convey complexity in a clear way to consumers and reviewers is crucial. So the idea of becoming a knowledge translator, not just a disseminator, but somebody who takes complex ideas and clarifies them. You make decisions about what's important from all that technical complexity. What does the reader need to know? Those are the important decisions, and that's where your expertise, your engineering, or whatever field you're coming from, that's where that technical knowledge is so valuable. So, in general, the better writer you become, the better our society becomes, right? In a society that is becoming so technically sophisticated, you being a knowledge translator is vital for people who don't hold the same sort of knowledge as you, and you become a service provider, and an important one, right? It sounds maybe a little bit of a hyperbole, but around a functioning democracy, but it's true. When societies become too disconnected, when there's a knowledge elite and the rest of the people can't understand what's going on, that's not the sort of society I think that we want in Canada. We want people to be knowledgeable, and so we will talk. We have a couple exercises around that. Successful technical communication. It's strong writing, right? You need to think about organization. You need to think about saying it in as efficient, concise way as you can. You need to think about your reader's knowledge. Don't assume what they know. We'll look at this in more depth. We're going to talk about design. We're going to talk about, this is something that really gets me going, is all the jargon and the acronyms. We're going to talk about strategies to reduce that, increase readability, increase credibility, and avoid ambiguous and unclear sentences. So just to start us off on sort of a lighter note, in terms of ambiguous and unclear sentences, it's not just first year engineering students. It afflicts journalists, policymakers, media personalities, right? I picked out a couple headlines that made me laugh. Panda mating fails. veterinarian takes over. That is one committed veterinarian. Yikes. Local high school dropouts cut in half. Again, right? That's a school where I'm pretty sure people were studying a lot. Or they could just mean that the number of dropouts decreased. So we will talk about why ambiguity comes in, about how to locate modifying information, right? Riveting stuff. It's important. I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but it's important. Modified information can be more confusing, right? The room contained a chair, a desk, and a chocolate bar. It was 26 feet long by 17 feet wide. The modified information, well, it sounds like it's talking about a chocolate bar, and an amazingly big chocolate bar at that. We know it's not, right? We know that they're talking about the room, but it's funny, and you don't want your readers laughing. You could change these words in this sentence, right, to some sort of technical analysis around a sewage plant, and we could make it pretty funny too, I'm sure. You don't want your audience distracted. You want them to pay attention to your core message. Don't kill your reader. Right? When removing the rods, one can't remove them too quickly. Right? Think about the alarms are going off. You open the manual. You work at a nuclear plant. When removing the rods, one can't remove them too quickly. Does that mean that you can't remove them quickly enough, so that's fast? Or one can't remove them too quickly, like you don't want to pull them out too fast? Which is it, right? And that's well, we'll let our imaginations go with that. Honesty and uncertainty is another, or two of the final key themes that I've combined them here, but we deal with them separately and in a sustained way. We talk quite a bit about plagiarism, and most plagiarism happens inadvertently or because somebody doesn't know how to make what they're looking at different, right? So they end up basically writing it the same way and not putting in quotation marks. Honesty is recognizing that you may have you find your problem around getting astronauts to Mars, and you think you've got a solution, and then you start researching, and you find that your idea is not that good, or it's been tried, or there's a much better solution out there. Do you avoid it? Do you not look at that piece of information, stick with your idea, or do you recognize, right? Do you look critically at yourself and try to improve your idea, or even potentially, right? You've got a whole bunch of options. You end up picking an option that you didn't think was a good one, and that's honesty. When we recognize that our ideas have to change, and we don't just go looking for things that confirm what we already think. That's that confirmation bias. We'll talk about fallacies in the course. And dealing with uncertainty, I put at the bottom here, thinking inside the gray box. And there's the cliche that's just been beaten, right? It's been overused so badly, thinking outside the box. Oh, that person thinks outside the box. Now I think it's blue sky thinking, and I'm sure there's a few cliches that have popped up. But usually when people say, oh, so-and-so is thinking outside the box, well, usually that person is still thinking inside the box. They're just thinking in new ways. They're thinking about uncertainty. They're recognizing new combinations. And so don't feel in your project that you need to strike out in some incredibly new direction. You can look at an old problem or an existing problem and think if there's a better way to solve it. And I've got some examples of topics that I'll show you in just a second. The content of the major assignment, pick any sort of a technology or what I call a socio-technical process.
Does it advance you professionally? Is it just something you're interested in? Whatever, but it's got to be something that you're engaged with. And so what you do is you take your problem, and it might be based in a real organization, but what we ask you to do is create a scenario whereby it, there's this problem that could benefit from some sort of a attention, some sort of solution, and we ask you to look for options, right? Not just one solution, but an analytical report, right? It has a problem statement, has background, has a list of usually 3 options, and then your recommendations. And so it's going to be a document that is used by senior decision makers in your organization. You can be in the public sector, you can be in the private sector. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's totally up to you. Let me give you some examples to help you envision what this project might look like. It can be big and small, big or small, it can be serious, it can be lighthearted. I've given a bunch of examples that are, probably more on the serious side. Maybe a fleet of electric cars or buses for Oshawa. Maybe you're looking at standardizing software across your company. Maybe solid waste disposal issues, food safety, pandemic management. I put zombies, you see, with a question mark, because, hey, if you want to do a pandemic management analysis for zombies, that's okay. There are legitimate academic papers out that have used zombies as a method for advancing pandemic prevention strategies. It's all good as long as the research is good, the writing is good, the analysis is good. You can have a little bit of fun with it. You could look at electronic books replacing hard copies. My example that I've used a few times here: trip to Mars, biosolids, which kind of grosses me out, but hey, maybe that's the answer for some company seeking to, maybe it's a waste company, maybe it's a farm company. You could do an analysis. You could, if you're more interested in sort of social issues, there's methadone clinics you could look at, self-driving cars, junk food in schools is a fairly current issue, open source, carbon sequestration, injection pods for space shuttles, drones in healthcare, right? I know Amazon is trying to use them. Maybe there's ways to use them in the excuse me, the developing world. New safety features for NASCAR, tsunami warning systems. That comes to my mind because I'm on the West Coast. Whatever. I say this with great care. I don't care. We don't care what you pick. As long as you're engaged, as long as it's technical enough that you can write a full analytical report around it, that's all that matters. So start thinking now. We do the first writing assignment, the in-lecture activity, or what I call the writing activity, is around ideas for the project. Throw them out. Get your brain going about it. Getting back to plagiarism, right? So what you're allowed to do in this course is study anything that you're interested in. What you are not allowed to do is to use other people's work as your own. And there's a real enticement there where when people are under stress, right? It's the night before and they haven't got much material, and then they start pulling material off the internet and slamming it in and trying to pass it off as their own. Don't do it. Don't do it. Take a couple days of late penalty. It's not worth it, because we've been doing this a while. We're pretty good at it, right? We spot lifted text pretty easily. We use turnitin.com. You just need to put it in your own words and cite your sources. We're impressed if your document's filled with sources. You've done a lot of research. Great. But when I say that, I should note that it's not quantity over quality. It's whatever is appropriate, right? So you might have 10 sources, you might have 30. It's whatever is appropriate to supporting your analysis.
So here we come to the course requirements. I'll talk about the tutorials and the quizzes in a moment. You've looked at the project in a whole, right? We've just been talking about topics, we've been talking about scope and scenarios, and in this course, right, especially in a writing course, you don't want to leave your project too long. So each of these pieces, the problem statement, the proposal, the analytical report, the draft, and then the final, each one cascades into the next. Each one supports the development. And so when you start off with this problem statement, it's not worth much. It's just getting you going with your project, right? It'll be in the form of an email. You can read, and hopefully you've already read the instructions for the problem statement. It really is a beginning point, and it's meant to mimic that process in a professional environment. So you would send in an email to your supervisor, right, who is your TA. This is a problem, I've identified it, and I want approval to develop a proposal, right? Because you're taking time away from other tasks in your job, in your scenario, and so you're flagging something. Your TA, aka your supervisor, has a chance to have some input to help you shape your scenario, to make it realistic, to make it manageable, to make your topic something that can be researched, right? It's not too abstract. It's not something that lacks research on it, right? Hopefully you're not doing a project, trying to do a project on time travel, right? There's not a lot of research. It's highly theoretical. And so that problem statement comes in, you get feedback. You can see at the bottom there's peer review activity, which is worth 10. We take that very seriously. So you'll post up your problem, you'll submit your problem statement, but you'll also post it to a discussion board where other students will comment on it. Taking that feedback, you may change your topic slightly or significantly or not at all. And you're going to develop your proposal. Again, for specifics, look in the assignment instructions. I'll also release a separate video that talks about the proposal. In short, it's a memo. At this point, you're expected to have done research. You're laying out the problem, right? At this point, you're not making recommendations. You don't know enough, right? You're proposing to do a complete report, a full analytical report. So you're simply, again, in the proposal, you're making a case that there's a problem that needs to be taken on and investigated more thoroughly, and you're asking for approval to do this research. Now, you'll see the analytical report draft is worth 15. It's worth more than the final, and that may throw people a little bit. But think about the point at which you submit that draft, right? The proposal is something that the problem statement and the proposal go to your supervisor, your TA. But the full report is something that is going up the chain, right? It is going to the senior decision makers in your organization, the CEO, the CFO, the president, the board of governors, the board of directors, whatever. If you're in a public sector organization, a private sector organization, right? That is who is receiving that report. So in creating your full analytical report, the draft is the point that you would hand it off to your supervisor and say, look, I'm getting close, right? Can you give me some feedback on it? And this is where you're going to get the bulk, in fact, almost all of your feedback from your TA, right, is on the draft. They're going to let you know in a very
forthright way, right? Where are you at with your project? Do you need more research? Is the problem adequately explained? Are the options for solving the problem, do they make sense? What about the flow of the document? How is the citing? Should you add additional appendices, right? And don't panic. We will go through in the course each of those pieces that I've talked about and the decision-making process about what sort of flow, right? We'll look at rhetorical tools. We'll look at sort of familiar structures of presenting information. We'll look at decisions over whether to include appendices based on high and low context readers, all that sort of stuff. So the analytical report draft goes in sort of about, 2/3 of the way through our semester. And the TAs give you a bunch of feedback, and then at the end of the semester you have time, right? You receive your feedback, you also receive peer feedback, you are in polish mode, and you work your analytical report and try and bring it up to a high professional level and submit, and that's worth 10%. So it's a process, right? It's not something that you chuck in a proposal, then you go away and you submit a final document at the end of the semester, and you get a bit of feedback, which you probably aren't likely to read, and you walk away from the course. This course is about developing your capacity, and that can't really be done unless there is this sustained engagement. So I think the TAs are excited, and they're looking forward to helping you craft a professional looking and reading document that is something that can go in your portfolio, right? As you go out and you're looking for co-op jobs, you're looking for, whether you're still in school or whether you're going to graduate and moving on, it's something that you can take with you. So that really informs the logic of these four: the problem statement, the proposal, the draft, and the final. The marking guides are something that you should read carefully, and obviously consult the instructions. And within Blackboard Learn, there's a whole bunch of research and writing resources. There's your TA to talk to, there's me to talk to, and in the peer review process, I think you'll get to see a lot of other work. Some of it will be high quality, some of it will be low quality, some of it will be middling, but you will get lots of opportunities to see work and to sort of think about the principles that we read in the textbook and see how they apply in the wild, so to speak.
The weekly reading quizzes, they will be advertised well in advance. You can write them wherever you want. The quizzes are open book, so I make the note here that they're challenging but no trick questions. You'll get 45 minutes to answer 10 questions, and I think that is ample. We used to, as I talked about earlier, do a midterm and a final, but the goal is to have you read the material before watching the videos, and especially before going to tutorials, the corresponding tutorial where you're going to cover the information in the text. So this seems to have worked well, and so just keep an eye out. I will always send an announcement with links to where you go to write the quiz, what the quiz covers. There are some technical issues, really mostly just around bandwidth. Is your connection stable enough to write the quiz? So again, you'll see material flow out about that. The tutorials are a really important time for you to get to know your TA, right? This course is designed to mimic, in some ways, a professional writing environment. Your TA for your major projects, right? In your scenario, your TA is your supervisor. They are the one marking your proposal and your writing activities and your formal analytical report. I spot check, I consult, I'm involved, but they are at the center of the marking. So we work together to make sure that marking is similar, right, and that we all use the same rubric, which will be available to you. But each TA is their own unique individual. They will have slightly different expectations. They will give you slightly different instructions. And so it is very important that you go to tutorial, you get to know them, right? It's not that you write exactly for them, but in a professional environment, you are your supervisor, your CEO, your CFO, whoever. That is often your key audience, right? That is who you are writing for. So you are, in a sense, writing for your TA. Your TAs come from various backgrounds. They are invaluable. They've done lots of writing themselves. They've done lots of teaching of writing. I'm really happy with who we're working with this semester, and you will get a chance to meet your TA at your first tutorial. So I'll let them introduce themselves. But in general, you have to go. It's not just about being there, right? But it's actually about participating. So take the time to have read the material. You should have done the quiz before your tutorial. Take in questions, right? It's a time for you, right, to access your TA and clarify instructions, to ask for guidance, to work out if you're struggling with a project idea. I'm always available via email, and I have the drop-in times. I'm happy to consult as well. If you're sending out emails, unless it's something extremely specific, always include your TA and me. Even if you're writing just to your TA, CC me. If you're writing to me, relates to the course, CC your TA, right? Just keep the both of us in the loop. Okay? So, core message, go to tutorial. A few other things. There's no bell curve. So we do a lot of collaboration in the course. We do a lot of peer review. And so we hope it's a non-competitive sort of process, right? You're not worried that if you help somebody, they're going to get boost their grade and your grade's going to go down because there's a curve. You get what you get. And so in that spirit, we hope everybody gets in there and mixes it up, and we ask you to do some peer editing. And I talk, I mentioned in part one that I've done some professional editing, and I really enjoy it. And my hope is that you embrace that as well. You look at yourself as a professional editor and really try to improve those other people's writing and their documents. This sort of shouldn't even really need to be said, right? Treat everybody with respect, and treat the communication here as practice for your working life. So don't just blast off an email. Draft it, think about it, reflect it. If you're concerned, have a peer look at it. Particularly if it's an issue that you're unhappy about and you want to affect some change, right? I'm sure most people here have seen an email that was written in haste and in anger, and usually doesn't benefit the person writing it, and it usually doesn't solve the problem. So work on your, not just this formal document that we work on, but your interpersonal communication. The library, I will outline some resources that are there for you in a later video, but if you're close, go check it out. Walk around. The librarians are great. They're paid to help people, and they if you walk up and ask them, they will want to help you, and
your success can be helped by them, by the resources. They know stuff that I don't know. The TAs don't know. They're experts on their field. If you're struggling with your writing, we can provide some feedback on grammar and writing mechanics. You'll get rich feedback, but you're not going to get your document marked up line word by word, comma by comma. That's going to take something else, whether it's a peer reviewer and a good one, whether it's the Academic Success Center. It's up to you. So when the TA alerts you and says, hey, look, you need to work on your writing, you've got significant problem with your writing mechanics, that's a trigger early in the semester that you need to go and seek somebody out. All right, so I'm done. I tried to keep it short. It's not that short. Hey, hint, buy the book. Right? Buy the book, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book. Get reading. You can't succeed in this course without the book. Unfortunately, between the expectation that you implement the material from the book in your analytical report, talking about content in tutorials, the quizzes, right? You can't do it. You've got to own it or share it if you trust somebody that they're gonna share the book back. Please review the syllabus carefully and look it over. I sometimes joke, that they always say there's no stupid questions, and that in fact there are when something's on the front page of the syllabus. And somebody asks you, right, after you've explained it to them and you've said, look, here's the information, read this, and then they ask you, that's kind of a question that didn't need to be asked. So the documents are online. I've put in screen reader friendly versions. Those are searchable. Take your time. It builds your credibility as a student and a future professional that you can search out information, find it. Having said that, if you look and you can't find anything, do not hesitate. And don't hesitate to drop in again in those Adobe Connect drop-in hours. So your job before next week is to read principles 1 through 3. It's not pages 18 to 56. It's a pretty good read, but I think it'll orient you. It's an important part. It sets the stage for everything we do after. And the biggest one is thinking about your problem, your scenario. Right? Start jotting things down. It can be things you're passionate about, things that make you angry. Right? I use an example I'll talk about in the course is traffic in Toronto, so and urban urban infrastructure down there, and that's it. So stay tuned. I'll continue to release short videos about the proposal, the analytical report, research, and then on Mondays and earlier than I have on this now, release videos around content. And as I said, I'll try to do one thematic, and then a few shorter ones that deal with specific material. If people are advanced enough in their writing, they can move quickly through them. If you need to look at them, you can watch them again. But that allows us to deal with the diversity of abilities in the course. So finally, welcome. It's going to be a good semester if you put the time in now to get that problem clear in your head and think about your scenario. And this is an intro video. I will offer some additional examples. I'll talk about what does a scenario look like? How detailed does it have to be? We'll look at that shortly in the next couple weeks. Okay, we'll talk to you next week.